Number.
Maybe. I know Alex has.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, great. It's no.
Y'all want to do speech drops so we can get specs on?
Okay.
Okay. Right, I already said what I got, right?
Try.
You look at what's not just
I don't know. I'm gonna do this one. I'm gonna try and flow.
You just check in.
Trying to see what angle. Trying to piece of paper.
Fire mark. I'm a fire person to the foot.
They shouldn't be. It's fine. Yeah.
Are you saying two case?
I can also set up it.
Case one of them.
Wait, here's some backs. Do you want? Let's record it.
Okay, I attached email to all of the debaters and judges. Please let me know if everybody gets it and or if not received something on an email.
Yeah, you're good. I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
All right. Thank you.
Running like a crazy.
We got the email chain started? Yeah.
Oh, it's already out.
Yeah. Is it pretty good for me to set up the app? For all the judges for me to send out to the app and send out again. Yeah. Oh, preference as to how I send it.
Oh, we're done.
Circling out. That's right.
The iPad's just gonna catch everything.
If you don't want, like, you want to give you a different.
Yeah.
Move the phone to the iPod.
Okay.
All done, yeah. Set. So Word doc, TOC port. Let me know what. Just maybe a cool. Are we good? Contestant want to shift the Indo-Pacific key. That's foreign policy 3-4. China and the Indo-Pacific aggressively expanding naval capabilities to undermine balance of power. Nuclear promotion allows China and Navy to operate longer. Washington require adjustments focusing on unmanned systems. China's ahead now. Trump with 328. China has largest Navy. China's shipbuilding capacity many times higher than the U.S. larger fleet. 125 with 28 more. Affirming stalls more to 25. Vessel developed by SMR catalyst for U.S. shipbuilding. Nuclear would be U.S. secret weapon. We need to invest. Math nuclear use change survival is preferred to guarantee regime loss. New options are emerging. That's MW 20. Navy slate rise to 500 unmanned warships. Significantly cheaper to build and operate nuclear submarines. Viability questionable. Short of major increase in budget. That bridges the gap low. 23. Destroy the Indo-Pacific Navy's force multiplying systems on unmanned vessels, create a network fleet that's more resilient, readily available, produced on shorter timelines. A strong Navy is key. Debbie, 25. Specifically, expanding power China to assert ambition action met with acquiescent response. Navy must establish a larger presence to manage maritime. The brink is now settled. 23. Top U.S. officials agreed to she will order military action to consolidate even 2025. That causes drawn heat. 22. U.S. China conflict persists for years, running conflict through partner nations, non-state groups, Chinese missiles strike throughout Indo-Pacific. C2's umbrellas. The U.S. nuclear umbrella is failing. That's dodge. 24. Relying on ancient bomb increase the risk of failure. The United States is less committed to deterrence. Plutonium pits. Criticals of modernization. NNSA currently cannot produce at scale. Modernization efforts are underway. Keating 25. Russia rejected new talks. China to little avail. Arms control is dead. U.S. in the midst of $1.5 trillion effort upgrades for the nuclear triad. We aren't moving fast enough. Spawning. 24. NNSA produced warhead ready pit. First time in decades despite difficulties making progress. Quota of 80 per year remains impossible to meet. Investment solves Livermore. 7. Plutonium is linchpin of nuclear energy strategy byproduct from uranium. Engineers find methods to dispose reduce nuclear waste using proliferation resistant technologies. Production scales up. Gal 25. 450 assets. NNSA rated 60% insufficient. Planned explosive infrastructure subject to budgetary constraints. Continue resolutions. Create uncertainty about which projects will be funded. The brink is now broadly 24. Assuring allies is imperative for non-rule abuse. Must commit to modernization. Any delay result in risk nuclear capabilities necessary for extended deterrence. Otherwise, proliferations imminent. Spec 317. Japan and South Korea pursue weapons of common U.S. security, aerospace, and China, North Korea, Taiwan, China, Saudi Arabia, seek nuclear arms, triggering increasingly attractive auction. Polish already signal interest. Proxy wars would ensue. Mumford 17. Proxy war for immune to deter nuclear promote. Irregular forms of conflict. Proxy war found perceptions of risk involved in direct intervention. It's detrimental to de-escalatory measures. 18. Allied fear amendment respond by hedging to demonstrate resolve undercut efforts to prevent escalatory spiral. China believe Allied acting on behalf of the U.S. heightened risk of war. Moreover, modernization increases arms control costs at 21. Arms control incorporating Russia, China must factor modernization key leverage modernization pressure states to participate in negotiations. That's key. NYC 23. Arms control talks avoid nuclear conflict. China's expansion is that the U.S. and Russia expand unpredictable points of tension in SCS, Taiwan, Ukraine, nuclear buildup, restricting global crisis. Warming. We aren't solving warming now. That's Crawford. 3.8. Wars will not track to be 1.5 Celsius. Upper limit to avoid climate change emission must drop 7.6% per year. Efforts are insufficient. Spisky. 3.4. U.S. leadership to reverse agency stance to greenhouse gases pose a threat, undermining decades of research. Part of efforts to help funding for climate. Nuclear can scale up. That's REM. 22. Solar and wind renewability problems due to research limits. Nuclear technology for about 9,000 years of energy. Legacy waste becomes fuel. 3 links. One, either is better than renewables, Russian 24. Nuclear needs fewer materials and land as wind and solar. Upfront cost made it difficult. Governments need to shoulder high cost or complex renewables. Plummet 211. To combat climate change, nuclear power provided consistent electricity, wind and solar intermittent. Nuclear produces full power crucial. Complements renewable solar wind challenges such as overcapacity, price pressure, and slowing demand that slows warming. NPR 22. Renewable power not enough nuclear power to fill the gap between transition to reduce emissions and stave off warming. Second link, it trades up with fossil fuel speed improves. But 15. Nuclear brought on 1932, 1986. Half electrical output came from nuclear emissions, lost by 75%. Most round installation in history. Fossil plants dropped 40%, but not with renewables. But key. 22. Renewables did not displace fossil fuels and infrastructural plant dependency insulated fossil fuels from competition. Fossil fuels cause warming. CSRIO. Note 8. Fossil fuels make large contribution to climate change. 90% of emissions from burning instruments probable extinction threat. McDonald 19. Nuclear wisdom based on shaky science and reliable model. Human authorities that nuclear device and nuclear war is not an extinction event. Warming is. Third link is it creates international competition. 21. American policy direct climate progress spring reciprocal form reduction every ton of pollution in the United States. Reduce resulted in foreign nations reduce emissions by 6 tons. Warming turns all impacts carries at 22. Global heating resulted in apocalyptic disaster. Catastrophic even at modest levels. Play a role in every extinction event. Tipping points where small rise in temperature results in big change in climate trigger cascade. Cause 8 degrees Celsius of warming. Breakdown triggers catastrophic risks, wars, pandemics. Crop failures, lack of water. It's scalar Pierce 23. Every 0.1 degree of warming causes 100 million deaths.
What? Engineers of this. Should be 7.
He wants to.
The energy they transition they imagine as an illusion. Nuclear energy is trapped within global petroculture and its prioritization of utility and efficiency only by positioning our politics and relationships around the growth can be cross the boundaries of restricted economy. Bosky 21. So science service on the analytical force, the other one we know the world by violently territorializing nuclear energy has been overtaken by the regime of global petroculture, considers solarity generate the access to the sun and the earth. This operation has overtaken the relationship between humans and other species around time for exchange the consciousness of life has never been cold the planet never hot every they hold of solarity and look coldly at our economy, but we found what we did being to embrace the ones that slowly around and let it power our future. Their desire to further growth in energy production via nuclear investment is emblematic of the restricted economy's drive to accumulate without expenditure, only grounding our politics in the sun provides a path towards sustainable survival. 2022. We receive more energy than we can accommodate because of the success of energy. Even growth cannot exhaust. We receive for no cost and expenditure oppose the goals of accumulation and growth of restricted economies, appropriate flows and subordinate them to finite and the creation of new markets. General economy cannot be an investment only pure expenditure, or we should be get from resource protection, or else we are inherently solar. Calculative approaches to what environment ignore non-knowledge is inevitable. They see an attempt to regulate emissions in the closed system, which ignores relational approaches of climate turns their case. Plot me into World 117. Strongly implies when there's a kind of miserliness and embrace of rationality that defies measurement and sustainability wouldn't be better enough for scarcity and cost benefit analysis. Climate change discourse ignores dimensions of knowledge that don't master the plan we regulate emissions within a closed system. The other possibilities of return to live experience, resting ourselves, grasping transformation. We operate within closed systems. Scarcity that faces this calculation logic support production overflows. The corporations preoccupied with productive use of scarce resources. Focus on rationality allows us to live beyond calculation, engaging in excess, and sharing, giving, real, relating. 3 links from their case. 1, they're focused on cost benefit as a capitalist method of utility and utilitarian expenditure. Waiver reads green on Climate 2025. Cost, risk, and waste management challenges, highly secure and carbon storage solutions. Solar power in particular have seen dramatic cost reductions, making them increasingly competitive fossil fuels and energy renewables to reduce reliance on imported fossil fuels, nuclear enabling easier developing cost efficiencies. Then, Lowe's idea that we need to bridge the gap on innovation rooted in ideals of utility. That's a link. Waiver reads blue. To deter if needed, accelerated innovative systems and man vessels created readily available shorter timelines. When he sees preservation and growth advocacy of nuclear energy through REM is exclusionary and solely focused on utility, which only serves to exclude the general economy. The waiver reads green. Advanced nuclear can theoretically provide 9,000 years of renewable energy. Their rejection of expenditure forces excess production to expend violently in war and climate devastation, modern restricted economic logic locks and perceptions of human nature dualism and fantasies of the earth fighting back against violence, which makes their impacts inevitable. Only through sharing, giving, and taking responsibly can we develop a sustainable future. Timothy 20. Restricted economies, as people from temporary restrictive economies are extracted, they have to be confronted by the general economy. We have to learn to extend non-productively and consciously attempts to control carbon, only increase mass, only global coordination, deciding not on how much we can take, how much we can give without reciprocating good work. And violence of the unforeseen can be compared to restrictive violence that excludes what it cannot cover and thus produces an excess that everyone else has suppressed. The pandemic of climate change manifestations, the violence of the non-human. There is a tempting image of the human abusing nature that tries to take revenge, addressing nature in terms of rage, eradication, transfer, solar violence, and language of restricted economy. Earth does not really strike back as they see different humanity. Let's think of the economic model that overcome restrictions of the exchange of production and with warfare or climate change. When general economy takes the luxurious character of nature as its starting point and transforms destruction into non-productive expenditure, learning to share because sharing is glorious and breaks with utility. Vote negative to become solar. See the sun as a comrade, not a resource, and collectively negotiate our position to energy in a sustainable, generous, and thoughtful way. The perm fails. Attempt to shift to a green version of the restricted economy entrenches a constant state of violence that serves a growth. Timothy 22. Needs to go with energy capabilities to be sick of parasitic capital, learning, point, and development, sort of collision between economy and ecology, produces catastrophic side effects of the economic being transition of variety of capital, false consciousness, and market, and they need more resources to never take one area after another. We have free energy economy, balloon, using up planet's resources, solar politics, race of Promethean, circle of relationship, exacerbation, the sun is a comrade, liberation of nature cannot be work of nature itself, liberation of nature is the alienation and creation of alliances between human struggles and generosity is something as a creative capital. The role of the balance of over the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds of define the restricted economy. That means expending energy and understanding celerity is limitless rather than scarce. We need this open space for new experiences that disrupts traditional comparison, value, and knowledge. So on and bottom 15. The subworld energy in all directions, human fuel existence, overflowing energy, restricted economy, limit, damage, reserve energy, rate, of persistent general and restricted economy, to live, generate, backing, experiencing, steady, utility, care, values, community, irreversible waste, general economies, and the hero theory from which we are physicalism have been banished, not a theory, not fully rational because of natural reverse and human scales, and homology successful as natural science nature is governed by laws of human prejudices. Got the card there. I'm continuing card. Human celebrate expertise, we self-praise, group, beginning of general economy, can't be brought on language of utilitarian knowledge. Cut the next card. Affirm.
Negate.
Okay.
We did not read the last one.
Was a card cut?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Pass
Oh.
it.
No, that's not-
Fire.
Hold it 15 was not ready. All things like the link that says it has all your links to arrow 404.
Sure. Let me just put it on the email.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Your argument says that we should ideally transition from the general to the restricted economy. Has the world? If my basis is wrong,
Okay, we say the exact opposite of that. We say that we need to view things through the lens of the general economy rather than the restricted economy. It's less a transition from one to another. It's more the fact that the general economy exists, but we ignore it in favor of the lens of the restricted economy.
where does it exist?
Where does the general economy exist?
Yeah.
The general economy, it's like it's kind of everything. Like energy
Wait.
if I can just explain kind of how it works. Energy comes infinitely from the sun. It powers things that exist. Then it goes towards phase of maximum utility, or it becomes useful to
I
us.
just want to know who participates in the general economy.
Humans.
Does anybody right now?
Humans, the earth, the animals, the sun.
Okay, so who does?
Who doesn't? Everyone participates in the general economy. It's just that we refuse to look at things through a general economic worldview. It's not that we're transitioning to a general economy. It's
What's
a
the
change of
difference?
mindset.
So
It's
we're
the
in
fact
the
that-
general economy, but we don't look
You have
things
neglected
general
that we are
economy
in the
worldview.
general economy.
You basically the affirmative neglects that we are in the general
Wait,
economy.
I didn't ask that. I said what's the difference
What's the difference
between being in the general economy and looking at things for a general economic world?
Okay, being in the general economy means that energy moves from the sun to utility to waste.
Yeah.
Having the general economic worldview means that we acknowledge those things. Being with a restricted worldview means that we deny that. We believe
Okay.
that it's bad for things
Is
to be
there
wasteful,
anybody in
and
the
that
general
thing and
economy?
resources are naturally scarce. Yes, we are all
Wait,
in the general
no, I
economy.
didn't finish. Is there anybody in the general economy who does acknowledge the worldview of the general economy?
With a negative.
Okay, anybody else?
Probably the people who write our evidence. Other people
So
who've read the
it's just your authors and you.
who embrace the general economic worldview. There are other people who believe similar ideas.
Okay, so who? Like maybe some
So-
categories of people. Like my point is, like I don't understand why this argument makes sense if you don't have like history of a world that we would transition to or move between or transgress.
It's not a question of changing the world, it's a question of changing the mindset. We change the mindset such that we are embracing a general worldview as opposed to the restricted one. I think I've explained this over the course of the last 2 minutes multiple times. Could I take a question, please? Okay. Let's talk about the umbrella. Why haven't proxy wars in the past in the U.S. nuclear umbrella triggered this type of scenario?
Proxy wars in the past. Wait, like name.
The Korean War.
Wait, I don't think that was a result of like the U.S. nuclear umbrella not being there in a country that's then and a country then getting a nuke and then going to proxy war because they were once reassured by the U.S. but now weren't. I don't understand. I'll take a question.
Yeah.
So in a world where everybody has a general economic worldview, what does that world look like?
Okay. We would say that we are viewing the sun we say viewing the sun as a comrade. We
Okay,
view the
so what do
sun as
people
something
do
that
when
would
they
provide
They
us.
give and they share.
Wait,
We-
well, like what do you, okay? So give and they share, give and they share what?
We give
Like
and share
resources?
resources, energy,
It's like communist.
excess.
Yeah,
It would probably be communistic.
Type. That's what.
You managed to put it in the chain of yours.
I'd like a separate doc, but it's okay to use the English channel. That's faster.
Yeah. Sorry. I like just download it on.
Okay. Order.
It's gonna be counter roll the ballot.
Okay.
If we neg can only defend the flow, which I guess you can flow on their K or you can play it.
We're trying to counter roll about machine, like responsive, like
Whatever is easiest for you. I mean, we could flow it. I sit there. We'll try to signpost it out. It'll be the counter roll ballot, and then it'll be the neg can only defend the flow, or like they can't figure out whatever ult they have, and then I guess it'll be like our case for a little bit, and then it'll be down. Counter roll the ballot to evaluate material consequence of the most probable implementation of the resolution. A material consequence is the only way to find which effects are good and bad. Their reason in their case, the reason as why we should transition to general economy is because it has good practical benefits, which means we can weigh case and prove to that we are better if we have left material consequences, then we win the round. Second, material consequences is the impact of their critical education. The reason why they say excess is bad because of material consequence, i.e. war and climate devastation, which means we can also link into their, which means our role about definitely there. Okay, on the K. The only way they ever have offense in the round is if they can fiat any ult they want, if they can fiat the mindset shift. Because Crossfire proves that majority of people do not view us in the general economy. And all their evidence is in the context of the status quo, which means the mindset that they talk about exists right now. So the only way they win is if they can win that they imaginary fiat it. Neg can only defend the status quo. The app only gets one advocacy while the neg advocacy are infinite. They get ult which explodes limits because the neg can defend anything, makes it big unfair for the pro fairness, intrinsic the activity gives any objective evaluation by the judge. Also on educational, there's no way to prep out infinite amounts of advocacies, meaning there's no way to test the truth of any of them. They can say that feel an imaginary mindset shift, you should all be friends. This is not what debate is about. But two, it is against the rules. The NSA agrees. This is not a deadlock cycling solution because they haven't warranted why the ult is likely. The rules define the activity. If the rules break, even if they win, they are no longer and they follow through some to prove that rules are not violent and that they're willing to comply with this. We will preempt any arguments they make about education. One, education decreases even if they can't read certain Ks because they don't have it all, because there's no way to engage with the K they read because they can read infinite amounts of all, which kills all class because we each just talk about separate stances without interacting with one another, which means we never get to test advocacy or have any class, and it means their education is bad because it's entirely unpredictable and we can't interrogate it or question or have class with it, which is the reason why their education is bad. Two, debaters don't do more prep for different alts because there are infinite different types of alts you can read, which A causes burnout, which is the prerequisite to even participating in debate, and B just incentivize people to find general strategy, just look at backfiles. I mean, they do not actually increase education. They might say that lack of alter is less vague, but no, they have a simple burden. They can defend the status quo. This is not vague, this is material, this is what the world looks like right now, and it's damning because it means all of their evidence just non-unique to their case, which means they have no offense in this round. Okay. On our case, the only way case turns case if they can prove that it's true in every single instant. We will read empirics which proves that our case is true despite the K they talk about, which means even if they are right that it turns case to some extent, it doesn't take out the root cause of solvency. Because even if we do cost-benefit analysis, we are reading evidence that our arguments can historically happen. First on China attack. Y24 writes that in 2012, only 12% of China's forces back were perceived hostile foreign movement, 80% were 88% were opportunistic against vulnerable targets. Second on Cold War, you can gut check this. During the Cold War, the US and Russia were the only armies with like nuclear weapons, and they wielded a bunch of like proxy wars during Cold War, i.e. Vietnam and Korea. Then three, emissions reduction. American nuclear expansion empirically displays the fossil fuel, then reduces emissions. The scalar, Alder, Jaw, and Serrini 20 write that this study estimates the substitution between nuclear and fossil fuels generation in the U.S. nuclear financing opening reduced monthly net coal generation fired by 200 gigawatts an hour, implying a considerable reduction in emission. They cannot go for a blanket index. If we have empirics our argument is true and our evidence postdates theirs, it physically means their evidence cannot account for theirs. There's no way their evidence could predict what someone is saying in the future, which means the K does not, the K is not the active, even if the K is true, it is not mutually exclusive, which means we still have offense in the round. Okay. On the case offer, one, the first link doesn't make sense. To analyze cost benefit in the context of renewables, which the negative probably has to explains why nuclear can be both good or bad for cost, but we aren't driving towards cost benefit. Two, the second link is wrong. Innovation is rooted in utility, it's rooted in not dying, which is a prior question to knowing if anything has utility. Three, the third link doesn't make sense. Again, not try for utility. We just want people to have eating and food so they don't die, so they don't live in suffering, which is also a prior question. Also, we will turn the alt and say that they still have demand for excess energy because the government always has incentive to produce as much energy as possible to be profitable. If they can't be on my subject, Grade 25 writes that in issuing the order for emergency declaration, Trump said insufficient energy production constitutes a threat, but Trump lets out wind and solar. Trump wants to deploy more oil drilling rigs, build more pipelines, and bring more power onto plants on the grid, which means that not only meets any impact of the alt and means it's worth because they have all the harms of fossil fuels, but not even the clean energy benefits that we get.
Cool. We'll take a breath. Okay. Order is going to be case starting with, K starting with framing. K proper. That.
Framing being the counter rule of the ballot or framing being your framing?
Like both. I will extend my rule of ballot and then I will compare it to theirs.
Sorry, okay, there's one.
What? There are cards. Yeah. Let me know when you all get.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
People are good? Okay. The role of ballot is over the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds that define the restricted economy. Their role of the ballot argument is not about a good-bad difference, and their assumption that it is embeds them in notions of utility. Conceded Timothy 20 evidence should frame your ballot, given that all of their impact scenarios are inevitable under the restricted economy, i.e. continuously reinvest and cause these same impact scenarios to occur over and over again because we are unable to think differently. That concession damns them on all of this flow because even if they win that their role of the ballot is true, it is neg on presumption because none of their arguments will ever solve anything in the long run, which means the alt is the only chance at solvency. Then go to the weighing claims. Does not matter. Conceded Solomon and Vauden evidence indicates you cannot compare claims under the lens of the general economy because the different things are all functions of waste, not utility. Should take out all of their arguments because they've conceded the theory of power. Then all of their arguments are contingent on what happens in debate actually spilling over. No warrant as to why doing policymaking role-playing is good. We think it is better to change your subjectivities. Fairness only lasts 45 minutes. However, your subjectivity changes who you are for the rest of your life, which definitely outweighs and is the only way to solve these things in the real world because most people do not have the ability to be policymakers. Then they say that we must defend fiat. One, we do not need to. The alt just proves that their assumptions are not inevitable. Only needs to happen within this round to have material change or to have actual change. Their assumptions more violent and cause issues, which means it is good for us to reject them and independently good for you to endorse our method because it promotes one and shows that you have understood the form of the general economy and embraced it within this round. Even if we only make change within debate that is more people that fracture this logic which stops the violence that they commit in their daily lives, then neg should defend alt. One, education. A, denying K teams alt devastates the educational value. Our framing cards are reasons that RK is necessary within debate, but lack of any alternative provides no way to escape the cycles of violence we identify. B, they force K teams and those responding to read more about different strategies, which is far more likely to spill out. They say that they wouldn't read more, but we have seen empirically that people have, i.e. they have prepped out 4 different positions last night, and debaters talked to us about all of these arguments. Then is fairness. If you really want to think that it's an impact, the lack of alts creates overwhelming vagueness. It's impossible to engage with our strategy if we have not provided one. They also get infinite advocacy is proven by the fact that as teams read a bunch of different advantages, any number of infinities is still the same number, given that they have infinite advantage ground. That still prevents us from prepping, and is the reason why people still break new. Then they say that like, oh, it is not likely. Yeah. They say that like rules matter, but the rules can be distinguished. Following speech times might be good, but like us people reading alts does not cause anybody to stop reading them. Then again, we have not fiated anything. We just say that it is good to not do what they are doing. Yeah. The DA or the act. One, they were charged within liberalism, dooms their politics by denying the importance of the present human exploration. Only a radically different mode of approaching politics can provide a path forward. Paul 15. Mainstream political debate ruled by triggering focus liberal traditions, zombified by resurgent in the media, avoiding leaving the majority, and utterly indifferent politics, tie human beings to the condition of working anticipating against the moment, is suppress the present internal moment, and infinite freedom must not be denied in politics designed to pay. I'll cut the card there. 2, concession of Timothy the 20 is damning because all of their impacts are terminally non-unique under the status quo, which should frame your ballot. Then the ships argument. 1, recruitment is at all costs. Wilkins 25. Navy's most undermined branch of the military. 40% of the subs are unable to sail because the Navy cannot serve them. Cut the card there. The umbrella argument. The Livermore evidence concedes the Afghan solved. NuevaAH reads green. Livermore 2007. Addressing the issues requires increasing the understanding of plutonium and other activities in technology on warming. It's inevitable under the restricted economy. Their desire to use energy to accomplish the goals of the affirmative dooms us to the failed logic of petroculture heard by 20. To reach regular cosmic energy, historical correlation between the Anthropocene and Petrocene comes with capital separating of energy as something spent for immediate human goals. Got the card there. Go back to the K. All of their like, no, we don't link stuff because they have done utility to try to preserve life is the link, even if life is the end goal. Utility is the internal link. Also, they've conceded the carded arguments about how they view climate change as something that we can solve utilitarianly, and how they frame nuclear energy as this one all solution. Even if petroculture is inevitable, it does not matter.
Wait, y'all.
Right, we might be at capacity.
Sorry, the fire
We're at the
marshal
fire
has
defense.
instructed us to not allow.
Sorry. Thank you.
We're on the board.
Listen, and I'll be ready for trial. What? I'm going.
Oh,
It's set. It's set. I just hit it. Thank you. Savage?
I don't.
Okay.
Now I do.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Can we do cross now?
Yeah. Is it on?
Yeah. You got
What does voting for you do?
few things. One, it does not endorse your method, which we have identified as violent.
So it's not topical.
What? What? What?
Like,
No.
wait, are you trying to
Yes,
drive
you should
off?
prep.
Wait,
But the reason why you should vote nay is that voting affirmative causes violence, both in round and out of round. Then also you should vote nay because we have identified that the general economy is good and that our transgression of its bounds enables people to explore their subjectivities in ways that change who they are both inside debate and outside of it, which infinitely outweighs all
wait,
of
but
your
why
arguments.
does voting neg allow you to do that if you're not the audience?
Sure, we don't need to fiat it. Our argument is that within debate, like we have not said the US federal government is going to do anything. Our argument is that we have endorsed a mode of politics that is transgressing the restricted economy.
But why do you need to vote neg?
What? Sure, because we have defined the role of the ballot as endorsing or as voting for people who do transgress those
But,
bounds.
like, what does voting for you do if you are not
What?
fiating?
One, again, it rejects you. You are violent.
Why?
You
Why?
cause
Why did voting neg reject them?
because you lose the round. Like,
But why is that a rejection?
wait, dude, the way debate works is you vote for the like. If somebody makes
No.
arguments and then we answer them and say that your arguments cause violence, then you vote for us.
Okay, so if we win your arguments also cause violence, then you vote for us.
Well, I mean, you should make we've made framing claims that say our violence
Wait,
outweighs
you're just
yours.
using buzzwords. We've also made framing claims that if we prove that war will happen in your world, then you also cause violence.
What? I mean,
Wait, you just conceded a turn on the alts that we would always shift to other forms of energy production like fossil fuel, which is bad because it means you co-op all
we
of
have, dude, we have not fiated any argument, or we have not talked about any argument about how we're going to structure our energy. Like, our argument is not about structuring energy.
Yeah, that's
you have,
the whole point.
you have conceded that, like, inevitably, when we view energy as restricted, we will inevitably reinvest in other things. But the key thesis claim to decay that you have dropped is that no matter what form of energy we use, only the alt is able to solve by regulating how we get.
How do you get access to the alt if you were not fiating?
Because you do it in round. We have endorsed a mode of
How do
politics.
we invest in energy in this round? Like which one of the people in this
We have not invested in energy. You are the one who invested in energy.
So what does voting neg do?
It rejects your investment.
Well, and then what do you do with that then?
What?
If you reject our investment, we're saying you'll invest in other things.
What? What?
But yeah,
Okay. The claim that I made is that debate itself will not spill over to change anything in the real world, like in terms of policy making.
wait, that's not in the K, right?
No, that was in the last one. But it will not change anything in the real world in terms of policy making. However, what it can change is how we approach, or like how we think about our subjectivities. Your subjectivity in this round was problematic, and we have indicted it.
Wait,
Thus-
you're saying it's problematic
Can I
because it
finish?
leads to war, but we're saying your subjectivity is also problematic because it leads to war too.
Our subjectivity is not what you have indicted. You have indicted. Okay. You have said, oh, we need to do increased investment in nuclear energy.
Yeah.
You have not said that sort of either A, the alt causes war, or B, you have not said that we as people have done something that causes war. You in this round have done things that are the root cause of climate change, devastation, and also the way that we view humans in terms of utility, which causes violence. But that's
We're taking. Okay, yeah, take prep starting now.
okay. I have 214. What do you have?
Yes, I think we're out.
Okay. Order.
It'll be like. It'll be like. The roll the ballot debate. Then it will be Hayes. Then it will be
Your case?
Yeah, sorry. The roll of the ballot be asked, then the K.
Cool.
The case specific order, I'll sign those. So we're good. Yeah, cool. Send the counter roll the balance of value material consequences, the most probable implementation of the resolution is the only way to determine what's good or bad in the specific context of our affirmative arguments, which circumvents their blanket index. They've dropped no blanket index because it doesn't explain our scenario, because they might critique the general idea of our arguments about the specific scenario that we have made. So there are no links to the case. They've just said things like investing in nuclear are bad, or like war or authoritarianism are bad, but not specific to our argument. They say we engage in bad structured utility. Conceded. The only way to determine what is or isn't a good structure is by analyzing the consequences in the context of our because otherwise you made a general claim of the rule in the status quo, but not the thing that we say should change the status quo is the affirmative. Your arguments are old, but we have made new ones that you should have to analyze. They say impact inevitable one. Again, you don't know them if we don't evaluate the consequences of our impacts because they haven't analyzed by proxy wars, for example, or climate change trigger infinitely. A second, they've also considered uniqueness of violence is inevitable in their world too because war is happening right now. 6 countries proliferate, and we are not on path to meet emissions off the C2 and the C3. Okay. They say debaters change. We'll go over the argument debaters can change stuff in the real world. They've conceded in cost for industries their critical education is bad if they advocate or reject a policy that is good, and they've conceded that debaters can go out and vote, which means if they are not policymakers which they agreed, debaters not all of them will be. It's the only thing that matters. Every debater has to go and make decisions in the real world of what is good or bad, ethical dilemmas, but not all of them have to policy make. Also, we can analyze subjective thoughts about policymaking or whatever they say anywhere else, but debate is one of the only sites where we can discuss policymaking, making this site critical. The order's a little different than what I said. Just keep on the K proper. Going for the argument, they need to define the status quo. They've conceded. Actually, wait. Okay. They've conceded that education decreases if they can read the K because there's no way to engage, which goes all back, which the prior question of determining if the K practice is good or bad. We each just talk about separate stances without interacting, which means we never test advocacy. There's no rev debate, and their education is bad because interrogate their structure, which require questions determining if the K is good. And they've conceded that if we have to prep out alts, we get burnout, which people leave debate because they have an infinite prep burden for any single advocacy. You can make off the top. You can read analytics or cards. It's infinite, which is superior to education. As an independent reason to vote out because you can engage in the education and fairness of debate. If you are not safe and are burned out of debate, zero snag offense because a vote for them is a vote for the status quo. But they've conceded the case uniqueness. I'll do the case debate. Actually, no. I'll go for the turn on the alt, then do the case debate. They've conceded 100% that they don't fiat the alternative, and the most probable implementation of their world is fossil fuels. Drop. The Trump is poised to do them right now for the climate or for the carbon neutral case. The government wants control over its people and energy. We've explained why fossil fuels are worse. I'll explain why fossil fuels are worse on the climate debate. Stop climate change now with renewables, scale up with fossil fuels, partner with them to solve intermittency issue with both of them, which means they're able to reduce emissions, which is key because more machines have scale impact that turns everything else because it causes a bunch of people to die and causes other knock-on effects, which cause millions of deaths. Your only response to climate is to cost of the case, but we said no blanket index. Water evidence, post-states their evidence, like we've read empirics, which prove the case. Policy needs to respond to our specific warrants. The nuclear space fossil fuels, which cause 90% of carbon, and the climate change has played a role in every mass instrument on the way. You see that we have on skill because our competition spills over for their case endless wars where the U.S. causes resource wars everywhere else in the world, which explains more than what the K does.
We'll take prep. Yeah. Well. It's after 43. Yeah. Almost
5x6. Right. Presumption framing payout. Probably for presumption gates.
presumption break. Yeah.
Everyone ready? Great. If you want a simple ballot, the Timothy the 20 evidence says that unless we change our views of utility, we will have war and climate devastation. We view enemies as unuseful people to destroy and resources something to exploit. That means it's try or die for a shift in mindsets, which only the alternative does. And that also takes out all of their impact because it means that warming is inevitable in under their mindset, which triggers presumption. The app has to prove desirability, and the neighbor joins it, which is a real reason presumption flows negative, which means the indictment of their subjectivity is all we need. This is conceded the entire round. If you want a simple ballot, that's a simple one. Now let's go on to framing. The role of ballots is over the team who most intensely transgresses the bounds of the defined restricted economy rather than embodied by notions of useful debate. We embody politics with excess enables us to think outside of closed feedback loops and modern policy making that repetitively create the conditions for violence. Let's talk about their counter role of value. It's impossible to evaluate material consequences per the spike in Solomon and Bond in that Oliver centrifuge, which directly says that there are no scales and that things are not homogeneously expressible, which means that if material consequences aren't able to be expressed in the language through which they can all be understood, that means it's impossible to evaluate them against each other. It means it's impossible to evaluate material consequences. The only thing you can evaluate is who has endorsed a better mindset in the round. The only way they try to indict our mindset is based on material consequences, which means you're voting for us there. But then let's talk about some more stuff. A, they say that we've not given any specific links. We've just talked about nuclear energy. The affirmative is nuclear energy. That is a link to what they've been advocating. Then they say that invaders are able to change things, such as by voting. But what they drop is that subjectivity affects your everyday life and lasts a lifetime, whereas voting happens every 4 years. And they concede the Pollitt evidence, which indicts all liberal politics and tells you that it only reproduces the same things anyway, which is a direct indict to voting that they just dropped. Let's go into the no alts, onto the we must defend fiat debate. We do not fiat anything. Your ballot does not create a policy, but does express a mindset that you hold towards the round and towards the topic. The alternative is the mindset that you should be expressing. They tell you that they are unable to prep out infinite alts, but we only read one alt for a K. And it's far easier to prep out than if you have no alt and you have no idea what we're advocating for whatsoever. They also drop that we are able to actually engage in greater education by having debates about alternatives, because then you're actually able to pin down what we are talking about. They also concede there's an infinite number of affirmatives and advantages that a team can read, which means that it goes both ways. That means it's just irrelevant. They say violence is inevitable in our world. Let's just extend the K. The app is trapped in the petroculture where energy is something to be extracted from the earth, emblematic of a restricted economy where energy is scarce and utility maximized rather than flowing infinitely from the sun. That's Plotsky's. Restricted economies reinvest energy into systems of production in unstable ways. The limits of growth turn leftover production toward climate devastation. That's Timothy the 20, which I extended earlier. It's a terminal defense. The alt becomes solar. We see the sun as a comrade, connected with us through general economy beyond their restricted use of energy, a micro-political transformation that shifts the way we understand their impacts. That's Timothy the 22. They say that we are violent. They just talk about what Trump's going to do. That is not. We are not Trump. We are endorsing a mindset shift, which is what you are taking towards the round and their
extracted from the fossil fuels.
More importantly, you're solving the by indicting the petroculture, we have directly indicted any kind of extractivist form of energy, which means our mindset that you endorse directly indicts fossil fuels as well as any other source. So any argument that we create fossil fuels is relevant.
Under their role.
On the affirmative, everything's inevitable under their role. They also concede pure device, which means that no matter what, we're just engaging in the same extraction. It's a pretty clean name.
Yeah. Yeah.
System very clean. Do not.
It's next.
Sorry. Easy question.
Sure, that's.
Yeah. Okay.
Why go that?
Yeah. What's the impact if you go to that?
Nice.
Bet millions of deaths for one.
Okay, judges sign their ballot.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Have you won on the app before?
Yeah. Actually, probably.
You were 7-0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, no.
No. Like I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
right.
the case or other cases.
Yeah.
If I get the last
Oh
one.
yeah, you won on this last
Yeah.
round. Did that prevent millions of deaths?
No, but it was a good like praxis to endorse.
We'll see. Like I don't know. I feel like I could become president and I could prevent extinction. So.
We've
been
decided
one
one president who's done that.
Like a lot of we're like Ted Cruz in debate. Debate all the
But I'm better than Ted Cruz. Though.
Also, we didn't have a good impact like the second the round ended because our argument that was dropped that they will not become policymakers. What they will become is people who have to go out in the real world, deal and absolve ethical dilemmas every
That's
single
a
day.
warrant for us.
we
Our
agree.
mindset is about ethical dilemmas you need to solve. You've just said that we don't do policymakers. Can
Yeah,
you
and we
reprocess
have
Biden?
indicted the idea, like you conceded in a speech and Crossfire that if you reject a policy that is a good thing, which we've advocated for, it is bad under that mindset.
Our argument is that your
Hey,
sort
can we ask a
of yeah,
question?
whatever.
Why can the app generate infinite links if we're bound to the resolution? You can have any.
Like
If you can read any possible advantage ground,
Okay.
i.e. because PF is full res,
Yeah,
you've broken like
that
a
makes
million
sense.
different advantages.
Okay.
Sure. Let's talk about climate. Actually, let's talk about Jackson. You have a question?
Yeah. Okay. So you say that we don't become policymakers, and I guess why policy relevant?
Because we vote.
Because we vote. We vote on policies.
We vote on policies we decide
Yeah.
policies, and there's some like
have
referendums.
our votes for politicians ever been like the deciding factor? Right?
Wait, yeah. Elections are won by a coin toss. Have our votes for a politician ever been a deciding?
I feel like what you're saying is that like people shouldn't vote. Like I feel like that's like
We're
you're
not
just
saying people
justifying
shouldn't vote.
authoritarianism.
We're just saying it's
I mean, I
probably
don't think
outweighed by their
I don't think
mindset.
voting is particularly relevant to our mode of politics.
Yeah, that
I don't know.
that's
Yeah,
like
I
this-
feel like if we didn't vote, then like
Like drop Paula just takes out these things.
Wait,
I
everybody
don't
was like,
even
"Oh, we need to vote," and look what happened. So like,
but yeah,
Like I didn't realize that one presidency should back the history of American politics.
no. Like every year they're like, "Oh,
That is
this
like the
election,"
history of
and then
American
they
politics.
elect somebody that's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be good," and then he goes and like,
elect is not he wanted to elect did not mean that voting did not work.
I thought y'all said earlier that
My
you
definition.
also people
Yeah, like voting definitionally
Here,
works.
I get we're talking a lot about voting, like just in case you want.
Yeah, but
if
our
you're talking
terms
about
that
voting,
you
it's
have
really
been
not
like
like
in round are caused by,
Yeah, but
and your restriction.
but we're gonna go for the negative and only defend this vote. And we'll say in round you caused violence.
These terms are not Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess it'll be like the counter roll of the ballot. And then it'll be the stuff about like ethical dilemmas. And then it'll be Meg only defends this flow. And the alt's turn. Yeah. Counter roll of the ballot, baby. You said the counter roll of the ballot, so vote for the team that best minimize the amount of material consequences that happen. Their frontline in summary is incoherent. They say it can't be homogeneously expressed. But if you can't explain this back to me, this is not a warrant. Consequences can be expressed. If someone dies, then you know they died, and they concede that their counter roll of the ballot evidence justifies their counter roll of the ballot simply because the fact that prevents endless violence from happening, and violence itself is a consequence, which means we get to weigh the app itself. Second thing, we'll go for the ethical dilemma. Conceded from Vermont speech that we can talk about subjectivity and ethical dilemmas in any space, but debate in public forum. One space we're talking about nuclear energy, which means it's uniquely key. Second, they make a new backline summary, so I get a new frontline. We'll say that voting is more important, even if it's only 1 to 4 years, because the government holds the most power out of your life. They determine what laws are passed, which controls your day-to-day life. Which means voting is the most important. The ethical dilemma stuff doesn't matter though. If I can win that, they can only defend the status quo. We will go for the stuff that all can have any method where we're bound to the resolution. Yes, even if the app can read multiple different advantages, they are limited to a certain scope, whereas they can read any method they want. This is bad because one, they can see we can't interrogate the K in the first place, we can't cache, which means we don't know if their accuracy is good. But second, they have conceded that we are more burnt out because there are more types of methods they can read. It is not infinite, which means it's a prerequisite because people don't even engage with their debate in the first place because they get burnt out. On the altar, this was conceded in rebuttal, and it's a new responsive summary. They have conceded that they're all even feel the mindset and still has an incentive to have a dominion over energy because they want it to be profitable, which is a bad thing because then Trump would turn to fossil fuels for the conceded evidence, which not only any impact off the K and it's worse because it means you don't get the net benefit of the app. So if we win any risk of the app offense, you don't presume. Okay. On case, One, if we win uniqueness, it is tried after the act. They can see we're not on path for climate change right now, which means even if we also cause endless fires, we're the only risk to solve. They have also conceded our arguments are empirically true, which means the case is not the root cause. They can see we are able to reduce emissions in places like Sweden, which proves the app does have some risk of solving. They can see that the nuclear energy reduces emissions is more power reliable and makes renewables intermittent, and this place is possible to account for 80% of emissions. And they can see climate change causes things to reach towards. They've also conceded the way that our argument spills over to other countries, means we solve climate change globally, whereas they're only solves the impact in the US specifically. But if you can't explain the K2, you're not there.
Framing. Hey. That good with everybody? Cool. The role of balance is vote for the team who most intensely transgress the mouth that define the restricted economy. Rather than abiding by notions of useful debate, we embody politics of excess that enables us to think outside the closed feedback loops of modern policy, making them repetitively create the conditions of violence. They say that their stuff outweighs no. Conceded that our form of subjectivity is what actually affects you in your daily life every day outweighs 4 years, and the conceded pollen evidence indicates that whenever we vote for politicians, they just reproduce the same systems of violence because they're unable to think otherwise. Dropped. Even if you don't believe it, that should frame your ballot because it is conceded. All of their arguments about weighing do not matter. Conceded that the restricted economy structures things based on how useful they are, but that usefulness is impossible to accurately understand because it does not interact with our subjectivity, which is the only terminal impact in the round. We can't weigh things like headaches, for deaths, etc., which means it is impossible to evaluate this argument here. Okay. The abstract in petroculture, where energy is seen as something to be extracted from the earth, emblematic of a restricted economy, where energy is scarce and utility maximized, rather than flowing infinitely from the sun. Restricted economies reinvest energy into systems of production in unstable ways. The limits of growth turn leftover production into war and climate devastation. The opposite becomes solar. We see the sun as a comrade connected to us through the general economy beyond the restricted views of energy. A micro-political transformation that changes the way that we understand their impact. This is an easy presumption ballot. Even if you think that they are right about the role of the ballot, they have conceded that they always view energy in the same way, which means we can never stop extracting. We will always do the same thing. They say we have fossil fuels, but we stop viewing it the same way, create in-round changes that actually prevent us from viewing fossil fuels the same way, and their nuclear energy will always be extracted, embedded in, just push out the violence elsewhere. Presumption is so clean, it is not try or die because neither side can solve even if they are right, which just means you vote negative on presumption. Then the no alt stuff, one, we have not Fiated an alt, two, they have conceded that they also get infinite gas. We have to link to their argument, so our alt needs to actually negate theirs and provide an alternative, which means we do actually meet their argument, and it is better to expand subjectivities. Conceded that our arguments last a lifetime. Fairness is only 45 minutes.